to come together to make Nigeria a better place. And as soon as he got in his inaugural address, he declared that this was going to be a house of reform, or if you like, a reform house. We're going to shake the table a little bit. We're going to think differently and do things differently. And true to his word, he proceeded to set up, among other things, this committee, the ad hoc committee on developing the legislative agenda, and I was privileged to be appointed by him as chairman. First, the composition of the committee showed very clearly it was not a one-party affair. Secondly, asking me, who was new in the House, to be chairman meant that he wanted a kind of fresh look at the issues that the House should be engaging. And he, like I said, he wanted me to draw on my own experiences, my pedigree, and provide leadership for very experienced men and women to come together and develop a legislative agenda. So what you see in that agenda is an attempt to encapsulate the thinking of the House, the commitment of the House, the spirit of the House, the dedication of the House to a better Nigeria, a more peaceful, prosperous, and growing economy that would serve the interests of all Nigerians. After all, we call ourselves the People's House.
Now, Nigeria as a nation is faced with a lot of challenges.
That's true.
Now, the legislative agenda zeroed in on 15 points, which the House intends to make an impact on in the next 4 years. Now, what informed that decision of zeroing in on those 15 thematic areas?
Well, first is the general principles, meaning that we felt before you talk about reforming Nigeria, before you talk about making Nigeria a better place, reform yourself. So the section, the general principles, simply dealt with how do we relate with each other? How do we run the House in a democratic manner? How do we relate with agencies of government? How do we relate to the general public? What kind of rules? And I was privileged to chair also the ad hoc committee on rules and business that redesigned the House rules. And this also, the spirit of that work also informed what we did here. The other part of it dealt with specific issues from our own experiences, from our discussions, and from the contributions from outside the Assembly and those we consulted with from within and outside the National Assembly. Those issues that we felt affected the Nigerian people. Those issues that we felt government ought to have a clearer vision about and ought to deal with decisively in order to make things better. So on the one hand, we have policies, programs, prescriptions to deal with the House as an institution. But on the other hand, we have our vision, a kind of wish list. But each one is accompanied with a list of legislative actions, what we needed to do to get those things come to reality. So we think a combination of the two gave us a kind of holistic document that we believe will guide our activities for the next 4 years.
The document has 15 key areas of concentration. We have fight against corruption, we have economic diversification, we have security, healthcare issues, education, so many.
So many.
Yeah, I don't you think the House has taken too much? Why not concentrate on 3-4 areas and then get finished with those before you get into it?
No, the truth is that first, there is not a lot of time. We have to use the time we have productively and wisely. Second is that we have 360 members. That's a large number, representing every part of this country in the House of Representatives. And it will not be fair to deal with issues affecting one and not the other. So some issues are just broadly based, broadly focused, but some refer to specific themes. And in some areas, you only need to amend some laws. In some areas, you need to make new laws. In some others, you need to strengthen institutions. Some others, you need to engage in some legislative advocacy in order to articulate and put before the public to inform public discourse on what people should be thinking or talking about to encourage government to do the right thing at all times. So for us, it is not too much. We work by committee system. We have over 100 committees in the House. So if we can have 100 committees dealing with several areas, 15 key items is nothing to worry about. I believe it is not too much. Some of them can work, pari passu. You can be dealing with the issues of corruption, at the same time be dealing with the issue of education. You can deal with the issue of the environment, at the same time be dealing with the issue of economic diversification. One does not necessarily affect the other in a negative way, but they complement each other. And what we try to do in the legislative agenda is to say, on these issues, we know the institutions that need to be interacted with. On these issues, we know the institutions that are there. So if we pull them together, and come up with value-free conversations, we can reach to some common platforms and reach a benchmark that will be comfortable to everyone as a basis for doing new work.
We talked about joint task. Now, joint task is not only limited to the Parliament. The Parliament requires the support, the understanding of other segments of society to buy into its plans or its ideas. Now, what is the game plan for the 9th House of Representatives?
All right. First is that if you look at the document, let me pick two issues. I will give you an example. We are very strong on the issue of working with civil society. Not only because we want them to hold us accountable for what we do here and how we get things done, but because we believe that they have the capacity to clearly reflect on and articulate the issues affecting the people irrespective of where they are located in this country. So we're very strong on that. And that is why even during the launching, we invited a lot of civil society organizations and even had them make opening remarks about what we were doing. Second, to take another example, we talk about women. We're not a house that believes, when you put money in education, in roads, and water, women are necessarily benefiting. No. We believe that if you have a segment of Nigeria, a population where they are in the majority, nobody would doubt that they work very, very hard, if not almost harder than the men, but that they've been shortchanged, since political independence. Their numerical strength is not reflected in the numbers we have in the National Assembly or in the cabinet or anywhere for that matter. So for us, we're going to engage directly with the issue of gender equity, but not just gender equity, but privileging women and creating access, trying to join hands with them to break the glass ceiling, challenge this whole notion of housewifeization, but more importantly, ensuring that based on competence, on interest, on capability, that they make progress as they want to make. So for us, that is one area. The other aspect, we've already agreed that we are not, without sacrificing the autonomy or independence of the House of Representatives, we will work harmoniously with the other arms of government. That means that there will be easy communication. Our decisions and conclusions will be taken into consideration because we have an open dialogue system with the other arms of government. Within the House, we are working without consideration to say, you are this party, you are this party. Based on your own interests, your competence level, and how genuinely interested you are in making a difference, we'll give you the opportunity at all times to participate in our discussions and in our decision-making process. So whether in or outside, we believe that we are on a mission to do things in a different way that has not been done before. We believe that there is no institution that is so superior that you cannot engage them in a conversation, be they traditional rulers, religious leaders, and whatever. But if they deserve to also be criticized, we do it in such a way that they understand where we're coming from and the reason why we're making such criticisms. I think what has been missing previously has been having a robust environment for mutual respect and for engaging in discourses that challenge traditional thinking and coming up with conclusions that are actually implementable, not just coming with conclusions that end up on paper. We do not intend to work that way.
Unveiling of the 15-point document, a roadmap which points out the direction of the 9th House of Representatives and this journey of what the House describes as one of shared ideals to positively impact the well-being of Nigerians. Key among the agenda include social justice, anti-corruption, security, gender equity, economic growth, development and job creation, all of which the House hopes to improve on in the next 4 years through legislative reforms. President Muhammadu Buhari, represented at the event by the Minister of Environment, Mohammed Mahmoud Abubakar, and the President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, see the agenda as one that captures shared ideals of giving Nigerians a better deal.
Mr. President is very much aware of the need for cooperation between the executive and the legislature. It is said that a true democracy is when you have legislature, but every other form of government, you have executive and judiciary. But when you introduce the legislature, then you have a democracy. And Mr. President is very conscious of that. He is very excited, willing and ready to go the extra mile to continue in line with the initial cooperation between the legislature and the executive, and that we can see right from the very beginning and the presentation of the budget just a couple of days ago. Mr. President wants me to make it clear that his government, his administration will do whatever it takes to make sure we have that cordial relationship. Because we can see from what happened during the last dispensation where there was no that harmonious relationship. Mr. Senate President, Right Honorable Speaker, Mr. President is also aware of the importance of the House legislative agenda. It is an agenda that was carefully thought out, crafted, coordinated, and put together for the benefit of everybody, Nigeria and Nigerians. It is through this agenda that the legislature, in cooperation with the executive, will be able to provide the needed goods and services to the people, laws that protect the people, and also that will provide an environment for cooperation with other nations that will also improve the economic standing of Nigeria in Africa and in the rest of the world. It is therefore important to let you know, Mr. Senate, distinguished Senate President, and Right Honorable Speaker, that during budget defense, I assure you, all the ministers and heads of MDAs will appear before the National Assembly to defend the budget of the 2020 budget year. If we do anything short of that, that means we're undermining the cooperation between the executive and the legislature, and equally maybe undermining the progress of the country. And so I assure you, you will not have that problem of not showing up. Finally, I will also express Mr. President's feelings on the kind of work that the National Assembly is doing to maintain the kind of cordiality that already exists. And he said he will go the extra mile to make sure that that continue. And finally, he would like to thank you for inviting him to this all-important unveiling of the House legislative agenda, which incidentally turned out to be also the Senate legislative agenda. This kind of cooperation between the two houses shows that not only cooperation between the legislature and executive, but also between the two houses, which means it's a departure from the usual work where Senate is doing its own and the House is also doing the same. And I can tell you I'm a witness, because yesterday during our interactive session, the Minister of Environment, we sat with the chairman of the Senate Committee on Environment as well as the chairman of the House Committee on Environment. And that is also a departure from the norms, but also a departure that will improve the delivery of goods and services to the ministry and to the people, because we have the two committees sitting there. They can advise us and they will know what we are doing without altering from one house sitting to the next. So this is really very commendable, and we thank you very much for that. Distinguished Senate President, Right Honorable Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Let me start by congratulating the leadership and membership of the House of Representatives for this very important and memorable event. The event where the Nigerian public will have the legislative agenda of the House unveiled and made available. For me, I am not an invited guest. I'm part and parcel of this event and this institution. By my calling today, the legislative agenda that we're about to unveil is supposed to be our legislative agenda in the Senate as well. Being a bicameral legislature, the two chambers of the National Assembly have so many things in common. By way of maybe emphasis, any bill that originates from the Senate has to be concurred by the House before it will sail for the presidential assent. Similarly, any bill that originates from the House of Representatives must receive the concurrence of the Senate before it goes to the next stage of presidential assent. And therefore, the legislative agenda of the House is the Senate's legislative agenda as well. The Senate set up a committee to work on its legislative agenda, and we resolved and accepted the report of that committee. We define clearly our roadmap for taking Nigeria to the next level of development and prosperity. But certainly, that would have to have the blessing and endorsement of the House of Representatives And therefore, even though the legislative agendas of the two chambers would have been separately treated, we have the same mission. And that mission is a mission to take Nigeria to greater heights in the next 4 years. This 9th National Assembly, especially the two chambers, have a great deal of understanding for positive things for Nigeria. The leadership of the two chambers emerged through very transparent processes, and the two chambers enjoy excellent stability and relationships today. What is next is for us to ensure that we transform and translate the stability we enjoy within the chambers and between us, within the two chambers, into productivity by way of legislative implementation of whatever we decided to call our agenda. I have no doubt that the leadership of the House and the membership will work so closely with the Senate and ensure that in the next few years, the two agendas of the two chambers combined will provide the kind of stability in terms of sustainable development trajectory for Nigeria. We want to ensure that as a legislature, the 9th National Assembly improves and sustains better security for Nigerians. We want to see an economy that works for all Nigerians. That is to say, an all-inclusive economy that brings out the millions of Nigerians, especially our youth who are unemployed, into jobs, sustainable jobs. We want to see a diversification of this economy, where about 70% of our population that lives in the rural area is able to enjoy some kind of support from government for the agricultural sector to make their lives. The two agendas will definitely dovetail into one agenda with executive agenda. The legislature today, like my friend, the Right Honorable Speaker said, works very closely with the executive arm of government. There is no difference between what we want to achieve in the legislature, in the National Assembly, with what the executive arm of government wants to achieve. We want to achieve the same thing, and therefore we'll utilize the excellent relationship that we have today to ensure that Nigerians get a better deal. Let me say, by way of getting a better deal, that the House of Representatives has shown clearly how prepared it is to work for Nigeria in a reform way. The House, of course, you may hear this from the House, but the spirit and manner that the MTF was passed by the House shows clearly the commitment of the House, the capacity of the House, the willingness of the House to work assiduously for Nigeria to make progress. We are going to work jointly to ensure that we maintain and sustain this momentum. One thing that we have decided collectively with the House is to pass the budget 2020 before the end of the year, by the grace of God. Already the House has suspended plenary. The Senate will do the same on Tuesday, next week, for the consideration of budget defense by the ministries, departments, and agencies of government. And I would like to take this opportunity here today to say that only the window of October is available for budget defense. Any minister or any head of agency who decides to travel out of Nigeria without defending his or her budget would have no opportunity again to defend that budget. The National Assembly will do the right thing, will do the appropriate thing, work on the budget, and pass it. We will not like to allow anyone to frustrate our desire to pass the budget 2020 before the end of this year. So it's an opportunity for everyone who is supposed to defend or her budget or his budget to take the opportunity available. And of course, our processes are going to be firmed up. It is our desire as a National Assembly to ensure that Nigerians get better infrastructure and social services. Finally, let me once more congratulate my brother, the Speaker, and his deputy, and members of the House. And Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to inform you once again that the Senate has already passed the bill, amendment bill, on the deep offshore and inland basin production sharing contract for second reading. We are taking the report of our committee on Tuesday and will pass the bill for the third reading, and this House will now help us get that bill passed for the President to assent. Nigerians should know that this is a commitment of the National Assembly. This administration lost over 300 billion in 2019 because of what that act is. But as soon as we came in, the Speaker and I and the leadership of the National Assembly took it as a challenge to work on this act, amend it, pass it, and get the resources required in funding the 2020 budget as a result of the amendment. I'm sure, Honorable Speaker, distinguished and honored members, this is one thing that we will have to sustain. This is one thing that we have to continue to do in the next 4 years, because the level that Nigeria needs funds for social services and infrastructural development are such that we cannot afford to lose any more revenue that is due to federal government. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Speaker, House of Representatives Femi Gbajabiamila says service to the public in the area of politics demands total and unwavering commitment to make a difference in the lives of the people, as failure is not an option.
I welcome all of you once more to the unveiling of the legislative agenda of the 9th House of Representatives, and I thank you for being present. Upon resumption of office, I made a commitment to the Nigerian people that the 9th House of Representatives will be a reform assembly, a center of policy innovation, and agent of transformation in the administration of the affairs of the Nigerian state. My commitment to these objectives has not wavered. It is still as certain today as it was on that day, and I assure you that it will remain so. Thankfully, the ideals to which I have so committed are shared by colleagues in the House of Representatives. We are united in our determination to effect lasting positive change in the lives of our fellow citizens who have sent us here. Poverty and inequality, insecurity and strife are the product of policy choices. They are not the result of some inherent flaws in our nature or the consequence of an absence of God's favor on our endeavors. We have it in our power to remake our world, to make it better, to say that no child born in this generation will die of a preventable disease or fall or fail to receive an education because his family cannot afford one. We are entirely capable of building a society where our daughters and our sons are protected from the perversions of those who will seek to break their spirits and take innocence from them. We are the ones who can build highways that run from the deepest creeks of the Delta through the savannas of the West to the deepest North, so that through trade we might achieve prosperity, and through prosperity an honorable peace. Ladies and gentlemen, the document we have gathered here to present publicly is the product of extensive deliberations and contributions from within and outside the House of Representatives. We have listened to people from all walks of life and factored in the concerns of various constituencies to identify and articulate a set of priorities that, if addressed responsibly, will change the face of our nation and improve the lives of millions of our people. We have codified in these pages an ambitious agenda that we absolutely intend to achieve. First among these, to reform the way the House of Representatives manages its own affairs in every area, from the administration of our finance to the operations of the committee system and the process of vote taking and recording in the House. Our goal is accountability and transparency, because as we seek to drive reforms across the government, we are obliged to make sure our own House is in the best order. We have collaborated with the private sector to outline a set of objectives and develop a program of activities that will facilitate increased investment, encourage innovation, and drive economic growth. We will act to protect those who are most vulnerable amongst us, doing well to remember always the words of Hubert Humphrey, that great American statesman, who said, "The moral test of government is how it treats those who are in the dawn of life, the children, those who are in the twilight of life, the elderly, and those who are in the shadows of life, the sick, the needy, and the handicapped." We will seek through legislation and oversight, engagement and collaboration, the achievement of a kinder, gentler, more prosperous nation, so that we may leave as our legacy a bequest of love and promise greater than anything else that has come before. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my experience that nothing of substance or consequence is ever achieved by the endeavors of one individual alone. This is particularly so in government and public affairs. We succeed by the joint effort of diverse individuals and groups, representing different interests and constituencies, yet working together in pursuit of common objectives and in service of shared ideals. Therefore, nation building and the attainment of a society that is peaceful and prosperous, kind and accommodating, healthy and forward-looking, is the responsibility of all citizens, irrespective of status, tribe, or religion. It is a joint task. However, those of us who have chosen as our calling to serve in the arena of politics and public service bear a greater burden, because billions of people have chosen us and entrusted their fate in our hands. We cannot afford to fail. I thank the President, His Excellency Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, for his support for our legislative agenda reforms and for the actions he has thus far taken to support our objectives on critical issues such as the reform of the budget process. What we have today is a selfless partnership between the executive and the legislature, through which we intend to achieve great things for our people. As Speaker of the House of Representatives, I will do everything within my power to sustain that partnership for the benefit of all Nigerians. I ask for all your prayers and for your support in this joint task of nation building. Thank you all for coming here today. As you go in peace and in safety, with good health and Godspeed.
The ceremony attracted the presence of Gali Umar Naabba, a former Speaker of the House of Representatives, among other dignitaries.
I feel greatly honored to be in the midst of honorable members of the National Assembly and other eminent compatriots to deliver a goodwill message on this auspicious occasion of the unveiling of the 9th House Legislative Agenda. The importance of the legislative arm of government in the effective and efficient administration of a country cannot be overemphasized. The legislature plays the pivotal role of stabilizing governance by making laws that will ensure societal order, peaceful coexistence of the citizens, and good governance of the Federation. It is, no doubt, the bedrock of every democracy. No democratic government thrives without solid, well-articulated parliament. The progress and well-being of a nation rests on the shoulders of its National Assembly, and I plead with you not to handle the enormous powers conferred on you by the Constitution with levity. The onus lies on you to meticulously steer the ship of governance through the right waters to avoid any storm of turbulence. The destiny of the Nigerian state lies in your hands, and I am doubly confident that with your collective commitment, the country is destined for greatness and unhindered progress. As we all know, the Parliament has broad oversight functions and is equally empowered by the Constitution to form committees of its members to scrutinize bills brought before them and also critically examine the conduct and activities of government institutions and officials, which invariably cuts across the other two arms of government, the executive and then the judiciary being my own primary constituency. This sweeping power is not bestowed on the legislature for fun. It is absolutely with the intent to strike a balance between the three arms of government and also ensure compliance with the doctrine of separation of powers, which is anchored on checks and balances and enthronement of a regime of mutual relationship and interdependence. This is a constitutional provision that you must cherish and apply to the letter with a view to evolving the rule of law and egalitarian society. In your 9th House legislative agenda, you should endeavor to carry on board the general welfare and well-being of all Nigerians. The times are quite unfavorable, to say the least. The general climate in the country is literally inclement. The security challenges across the country are gaining momentum by the day, and the right legislation should be put in place to arrest the tide. The economic weather, too, is quite unfriendly. The purchasing power of an average Nigerian is waning. It is no more news that unemployment now governs the labor market. As you settle down to roll out your agenda for the 9th Assembly, I crave your indulgence to fashion out new laws that will address the plethora of problems plaguing our nation. I would like to assure you that as you embark on this important voyage of national rebirth and reinvigoration through effective, people-oriented legislation, the judiciary is solidly behind you. Since our role is strictly limited to the interpretation of the laws of the land, we will not leave any stone unturned in that respect. You can be rest assured that you already have a good and dependable ally in the Nigerian judiciary. We will, on our part, as usual, vigorously pursue the observance of the rule of law by all citizens. There is no sacred cow anywhere, as no one is above the law, no matter his or her position in the society. Justice must be served without fear or favor. Every law of the land must be obeyed. Let me assure everyone present here that the consequences of disobeying lawful court orders will be too grave to bear. We all should give our loins to do our constitutionally assigned duties with due diligence so that Nigeria can be the pride of everyone. I sincerely thank you all and wish you a successful 9th Legislative Assembly.
I rise here on behalf of the leadership of the House of Representatives to cast our vote, this time around, not a ballot box, vote of thanks. To thank each and every one of you that has found time to identify with the House of Representatives in this our great moment of a legislative tradition for unveiling our roadmap in the name of the legislative agenda of the 9th House of Representatives. Mr. Speaker, on your behalf, I would like to thank each and every one of us that is here to identify with us in solidarity, to of course unveil our legislative agenda, which we have rightly done now. I also have to specifically thank the former Speaker, Right Honorable Gali Umar Nava, who apart from his presence here on the high table, has also filled in the gap to provide for us here the services of the guest speaker, which he has rightly done, and we are proud of your pronouncements and your statements here as a man of the institution. Mr. Speaker, on your behalf, on behalf of the leadership, I would like to thank the service chiefs that are here, some of them represented, and indeed members of the paramilitary organizations that are here with us. It is also our hope that your service chiefs, when you get back out there, you chiefly serve Nigerians very well. Your Excellency, Mr. Speaker, let me on behalf of you emphasize, reiterate that with the unveiling of our roadmap here in the name of the 9th House of Representatives legislative agenda, which of course is providing us the roadmap, the blueprint of our operations for the next 4 years, to be laid by your vibrant self, the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Today marks the beginning of the take-off of the 9th House of Representatives, and it is our hope that this flight will be turbulence-free, with the captain in charge, with the co-captain Wase around him, and indeed members of the crew that involves Ado Dogwa, Honorable Monguno, Honorable Apatasan, and also a very strong member of the cabin crew, Right Honorable Ndudu Elumelu, the leader of the favorable minority. Mr. Speaker, I want to say with all sense of commitment and responsibility that from today, the doors of the National Assembly, in particular the doors of the House of Representatives, will remain open for a legislative interaction with the general members of the public, agencies, ministries, and members of the paramilitary and members of the military organizations in the discharge of our legislative responsibility in the overall interest of the Nigerian people. Mr. Speaker, on your behalf, I want to thank them once again, especially our number one guest, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who is ably represented here by the Minister of Environment, and whose statements here have also encouraged us to continue to partner with the executive arm of government in the best form we can to be able to deliver the expected from our respective constituents. I will not round up my vote of thanks, Mr. Speaker, without specifically thanking the Senate President for the words of wisdom. He has made statements here that encourage most of us. Your Excellency, the Senate President will remain an intertwined chambers, the Senate and the House of Representatives. We will continue to fly on the same page. We will continue to operate under the same aspiration and with the same commitment to working in synergy with the executive arm of government to deliver the dividend of democracy to the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Against the backdrop of findings of a research carried out by the Center for Legislative Engagements on the performance of the 8th Assembly, Professor Tahiru Jiga disclosed that a research conducted by the Center in 12 states show that the 8th Assembly passed a significant number of bills and gave suggestions on how to improve the quality of legislation in the country. He recommended the use of electronic voting on bills and critical motions for credibility.
It is with great honor and privilege that I lead the team from Yaga Africa and the Center for Legislative Engagement to this courtesy call. We thank the Right Honorable Speaker for the courtesy and granting us this audience in spite of your very heavy engagements and schedule. The purpose of our visit here today, Right Honorable Speaker, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, is to brief you about a research project which was just concluded by Yaga Africa under the Center for Legislative Engagement, which assessed the performance of the 8th National Assembly. I have the pleasure of being the lead researcher along with 5 other senior researchers to supervise and direct this project. We are preparing to have a public presentation of this report, and we felt it necessary before that to see you to present an advanced copy for your consideration before the public presentation of the report. Right Honorable Speaker, the legislature, as a cardinal institution of democracy, has responsibilities for lawmaking, for oversight, and for representation. The key question that we try to address in this research is the extent to which Nigeria has lived up to the expectations of the public with regards to these core functions of the National Assembly. We conducted this study using multiple methods of data gathering and also multiple methods of data analysis. We were able to, of course, do the normal literature search, in addition to which we were able to interact and administer questionnaires to principal officers in the National Assembly, to staff in the National Assembly, both legislative aides and the bureaucrats in the National Assembly. And we were also able to sample 12 states and administer questionnaires to the public on a sample of close to 3,000 Nigerians drawn from a federal constituency and a senatorial constituency in each of these 12 states. And then we also organize focus group discussions with civil society organizations and other professional groups who interact with the National Assembly and who are in a position to venture credible opinion regarding the performance of the 8th National Assembly. I'm very pleased to say that also part of our interaction and the study included 12 selected committees of the National Assembly, 5 from the Senate and 7 from the House of Representatives. And we interacted with the secretaries of these committees, we administered questionnaires, and also with the leadership of these committees. I am pleased to say that we've come up in this report with what we consider to be significant findings, which we believe will assist us in not only appreciating the performance of the 8th National Assembly, but also providing the 9th National Assembly with something it can look at and see where the achievements are, where the challenges are, and how that can help in terms of the way in which it performs its own responsibilities and functions in the next 4 years. This report, therefore, contains these findings. It also contains recommendations arising from these findings. I know how busy you are. since you are going to have the report, I don't think I should belabor the point about this. But I would like to highlight just a few of these findings and a few of the key recommendations arising from these findings. Some of the findings we believe are remarkable. With respect to lawmaking, for example, it is very evident that there has been a significant increase in the number of bills handled by the 8th National Assembly compared with the previous assemblies. Specifically, there were about 2,166 bills which were introduced, out of which 155 pieces of legislation were passed, including 21 constitution amendment bills, 5 of which have received presidential assent. The Senate passed a total of 172 bills, while the House of Representatives passed 343 bills within this period. Some of these bills could be regarded as landmark or significant for the widespread interest they generated, for the high media attention they attracted, and for the pertinent issues they addressed and the overall perception of their potential impact by the public. Such bills include the Northeast Development Bill and the Not Too Young to Run Bill, amongst others. However, the overall efficiency percentage of legislation was only 23.8%, which means that there is tremendous scope for improvement and increase in terms of percentage with regards to the proportion of bills that are introduced and successfully passed in the National Assembly. With regards to the gestation period of these bills, some of these bills took quite a long time to be passed. Ideally, Right Honorable Speaker, as you are no doubt aware, averagely, a bill should take less than 6 months to pass. But out of the 515 bills passed by the 8th National Assembly, only 47, which is 9.1%, were passed within 50 days. But a substantial majority of them were actually passed in excess of the 6 months ideal situation. In fact, many took as long as 350 days before they were passed. With regards to public perception of the performance of the National Assembly, we found that the performance was rated generally as average. Now, obviously, there may be quite a number of explanations to this. Some of this may be attributable to perhaps lack of proper engagement by the National Assembly itself in terms of advertising the work that it has done. In any case, we believe that this finding provides information with regards to how the National Assembly can improve its engagement with the public and advertise the work that it does and continue to leverage on its good performance. That is with regards to lawmaking. With regards to oversight, we found that while the 8th National Assembly has excelled in a few areas, but in many areas it seemed to have performed below public expectations. Whereas some committees were found to be very active, but only a few, others were moderately active, while the rest, substantial majority, were inactive. Again, there may be a number of explanations, and we've taken all these possible explanations in the recommendations that we have offered in terms of what the 9th Assembly and the subsequent assemblies can do to improve this. With regards to representation, this is an area where the ratings are not impressive, particularly the public perceptions and rating of the performance of the National Assembly. In particular, the public perception seems to be that in areas such as visits and the meetings with constituents, in areas relating to establishment and management of constituency offices, and with regards to responses to constituents' demands, and also attraction and the execution of constituency projects and general communication with constituents, there is a lot of room for improvement. I think a lot needs to be desired in this regards, with regards to the way and the performance of the 8th National Assembly. There seems to be a general poor knowledge about the existence of constituency offices in those states where we administered questionnaires, and also the performance in terms of attracting and executing constituency projects was also poorly rated by the public. But the public also rated the 8th National Assembly as very responsive to constituency demands in multiple forms. And of course, this relates to the other issues with regards to meeting the personal needs of members of the constituents. On the aggregate level, the overall assessment of representation taken from the data collected in the states was below average. The positive rating stands at 29.8%, approximately 30%. Only 34% was said to be fair, while 34% was said to be poor. There were quite a number of challenges, and when Right Honorable Speaker, this report is reviewed, these challenges can be identified and highlighted. So I wouldn't want to take much of your time with regards to this. But I would like to say a few things with regards to the recommendations that have arisen from our own assessment of the findings of this report. With regards to lawmaking, we have made 5 specific recommendations. First of all, we believe that there is need to entrench pre-legislative scrutiny as a norm for all proposed legislations. There have been serious challenges, for example, in terms of the time that is spent on bills, because there is no presentation scrutiny. And we believe that this is a very, very important thing that many legislatures all over the world do, and which we think this National Assembly can benefit from. And also the National Assembly may wish to consider creating Legislative Standards Committee to oversee this pre-legislative scrutiny process. It will definitely add value to the quality of the bills that are considered by the National Assembly, and also the quality of the bills that go to the President for assent. I think there were some cases where bills were returned because either of lack of proper editing or some inconsistencies, which could have been avoided through the scrutiny process. The National Assembly leadership should also endeavor to challenge legislators to provide periodic reports on constituents' engagements and also the activities of constituency offices. We also think that the National Assembly has a lot to do with regards to sensitization of the electorate on the functions of the lawmakers, as well as the imperative of their participation in the legislative processes as is normally required. As I said, a lot of the perception that came from the feedback in our questionnaires may be attributable to really this lack of engagement and therefore lack of appreciation by the public of the work of the National Assembly. This, in summary, without taking too much of your time, Right Honorable Speaker, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, is what has come out of this study. This is a pioneering study. It's the first time that this kind of study is done, and we believe that at least from the point of view of research, it gives us a good framework in terms of how we can keep improving conducting this kind of research for the National Assembly as well as for other public institutions. And we believe that a careful study of this report can also add tremendous value in the future work of the 9th National Assembly as well as subsequent assemblies. So thank you so much, very much, Right Honorable Speaker, for giving us this opportunity to give you this briefing. And I would like, with your permission, to now give you an advanced copy of the report. We will provide better and more copies in readiness for the public presentation. Thank you very much, sir.
House Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila stressed that the Parliament's role is lawmaking, representation and oversight are spelled out in the Constitution. This, however, is not the case for a majority of Nigerians who, he says, assess lawmakers on other criteria.
What you're doing here, or what you've done here, for me is another testament of the fact that there are Nigerians who are interested in what we do and in what democracy is all about. You are the unsung heroes, I believe, and we appreciate what you've done, your presentation, even though I have not had an in-depth study of your report, at least, but now we have a sneak preview. We know some of what is in it, the highlights. This is probably the most, I make bold to say, misunderstood arm of government in Nigeria. Maybe rightly so, maybe not. We still need to understand why. But I think even all over the world, to a large extent, the legislature is misunderstood. It is for us to correct those misconceptions and the negative narrative that's out there regarding the legislature. So that's why what you have done in the research of the performance of the preceding assembly is a welcome development, and it is something that will be used as a benchmark of what happens or how we are assessed in the 9th Assembly. But let me very quickly say, having said that if we don't get the fundamentals right, then the assessment that we've done will really come to naught. If we don't get the basis, when I say the fundamentals, I mean, do Nigerians really understand what the legislature is? Do they really understand the work you're supposed to do? Do they really understand the constitutional responsibility that's been given to you? Because if we don't get that right, if there's a misunderstanding and they don't know it, then whatever questions you're asking will not make any sense. They'll always give you the answers based on what their own perception is of what you're supposed to be doing. And if I may say so, if based on the Nigerian perception, both educated and uneducated, if based on the perception that I know it to be of the work of the legislature, then I'm surprised that we even have some are saying you've done okay. The assessment will be zero. It should be zero. Because legislators, as I know it, are meant to build roads. They're meant to construct bridges. They're meant to build hospitals. They're meant to build schools. They're not meant to make laws. They're meant to do all these things that the executive is supposed to do. And if that is the perception, then of course we're going to score zero. That's why I said if we don't get the fundamentals right before we begin our research and our questionnaires that we're giving out to the public, the average man on the street is going to believe that we haven't done anything. The work of the legislature is actually is not something that is visible to the naked eye. If you're meant to be passing laws, which is one of the core responsibilities of a legislator, I mean, the average man on the street is not interested in the law you're passing, doesn't even know about it. All he knows is what he sees. That's the difference between the legislature and the executive. What the executive does is visible to the ordinary man on the street. We don't do that. And so education is so important if we want to get this thing, this thing right. For instance, we practice the American system of democracy. If you're going to benchmark, or if you're going to assess the American legislature with using the same parameters here, the American legislature, which we here, those of us here think they're doing a good job, they're going to score 0 as well. Because if you ask the members of the public in America, what have they done? And if they're going by what Nigerians believe, oh, no streets, no this, no that. And that's in terms of work. Let's talk about in terms of what you're also supposed to do as a legislator in Nigeria. You're supposed to provide for every man in your constituency. You're supposed to pay for his rent. You're supposed to pay for his hospital bills. You're supposed to pay for his great-grandmother's funeral. You're supposed to pay for his child's birth. Whether you are educated or not, those are the demands, those are the things that are required of you as a legislator in Nigeria. Well, you and I both know that that's not the oath we swore to. So, of course, if you ask any man on the street about the performance of the legislator, because he has not paid his rent, he has not paid for his asking for his, he scored 0. So that's where I have a problem, that if we don't get the right, if we don't change the narrative and get them to think the way they're supposed to think, as this is my job, you'll always score 0. It's like going to ask the members of the judiciary, even though they're not elected. If you assess the judiciary and members start saying they didn't build road, they didn't do this, it's the same thing, because separation of powers. One is to make laws, one is to execute the laws, and that's the executive, and the other one is to interpret the laws. So you cannot impose the function of one on the other. We have to run an organized democracy, not just a democracy. Because the way democracy is interpreted in Nigeria, all it means is that you conducted an election. That's democracy.